Good morning, everyone. How are you guys doing? Okay, it's exciting to see all these bright young faces. The fact that you're here tells me that you're either about to graduate or already graduated and looking for a better job. So congratulations. This is a very good time in your careers to be looking at the next step. I have been involved in searches in various capacities for the last 15 years at least. And so I've tried to put together what I think are some ideas that might be helpful. So a typical job advertisement will generate 100 plus dossiers or applications. And this is very common across the board for almost all schools that I have interacted with people who are on the search committees. And there will be a small group of people, 4 to 5 people, whose job is to reduce these 100 plus CVs to 4 or 5 candidates who will be invited for an on-campus interview. To do that, of course, they read what you submit, your CV, your statements, your letter of interest. And they may also propose conference interviews, phone interviews, and they could serve 2 purposes. Quite often they serve the purpose of weeding out candidates from this large pool, but sometimes people are interviewing already pre-selected candidates, trying to see which of those should be invited for an on-campus interview. So the purpose could be quite different. And these candidates who are finally invited, by the way, this is already a great accomplishment. If you get invited for an on-campus interview, means you were the cream of the cream applying for that position. So that's not a mean feat to start with. There will typically be an interview that will last 1 to 1.5 days, and it might take 3, 4, sometimes a little longer to know the outcome. And if it's taking longer, typically that means you were probably not the first choice. They're trying some other candidate first and they haven't got the response as yet. So there is signaling going on. If you are careful, you can learn quite a bit from the signals you might receive. So I think the first hurdle that everybody needs to overcome is to put together a compelling package. So out of this large heap of 100 plus dossiers, where at least 20 people would be extremely good, and you really need to stand out, is the tough job. And the way you do that is focusing on your packet, trying to impress people through conference interviews or phone interviews, and thinking about if you really like a particular program or school, accidentally or not so randomly meeting with some senior faculty. And this is a strategy you could try, and it might be in your favor. Amongst all of these, I think your best chance of succeeding is your packet, because there's nothing random about it. You submit it, you have full control. You can spend a week, 10 days, 5 weeks if you like, polishing what you write and making sure that you put your best foot forward. And I strongly recommend it. So here are some do's about the packet that you would prepare. First, read the position description carefully. Not everything fits with what you have to offer. And I know some of my colleagues say, well, when you are at the entry level, you should just apply to every possible position. I tend to disagree. And of course, in this area, you will get as many opinions as the number of people you will talk to. So it's a good idea to talk to other people who say, spread your, or shoot in every possible direction. I tend to think that your chances are better if you read the position, see if this is a fit, look at the profile of faculty in that university, in that department, in that program, and picture yourself as a colleague. See, what would your picture mean? What would it say? So-and-so, specialization so-and-so, these are the kind of research areas you're pursuing. Is this a fit with the other pictures and the other descriptions that you see on the web? You need to provide the information that's requested, and again, be very careful that you don't miss something or you don't provide information that they explicitly say, we don't want it. So that might mean that you were just not careful in reading the description. You want to submit on time. Submitting early is not an advantage, but it's not a disadvantage either. So if you need time to prepare a dossier well, take your time up until the deadline. The main thing that I look for if I'm reading a dossier is this candidate the kind of person I'd like to see as a colleague? And there, what interests me is, does this person really understand what it is like to be a professor? What is the life of a professor? What is it that makes you want to be a professor? So let me pose this question to all of you. Those of you who want to be professors, why do you want to be professors? For love of what? Yes, in the back, I see a hand up.
The pursuit of knowledge.
The pursuit of knowledge. By the way, that's not the only thing we do, right? And in fact, that's not perhaps the defining characteristic of a professor. Yes, yes. Teaching. Yes, teaching is extremely important. And I was looking for some more balanced view. Yes?
The entrepreneurial spirit.
Very nice. So we are also looking for entrepreneurship, being able to develop a program of research. That's what entrepreneurial means in the academic setting. But really what it means is enthusiasm for being a professor is really about working with students, making sure that students mature from researchers or naive thinkers into deep thinkers over a period of time. So what motivates me, at least, why do I come to work every day cheerful, is because I have the opportunity to interact with the young minds that I see as leaders of tomorrow, that I see as people who would influence business, government, and other aspects of our daily life. So you really need to think about what is it that you think the life as a professor would be like, and what is the reason why you're applying for this type of position. You also need to write passionately about your current research and future research plan. A lot of times students would write narrative that is essentially an abstract from a paper they have written. That's not a good research description, because it doesn't really tell us what made you want to do that particular paper, what made you want to work on that research problem. The thing that the reader is looking for, at least I'm looking for, is your potential. Obviously, most of the applicants at entry level are new PhDs, so they haven't an established record. So I'm looking for, can I see this person in 5-10 years being a leader in their field? Most schools would write, if they are looking for a particular teaching requirement to be filled, pay attention. And somehow you want to be able to position your teaching abilities to match with the requirements of the school. Now sometimes there's no way to do it. In that case, I think your strategy should be to be honest and perhaps mention that you will need to develop some extra skills in some areas that they're looking for, but you're willing to do that. You might want to write in a style that engages the reader, as opposed to reading something that may be cut and paste, or that may be not speaking from your personal experience. What people want to see is, who are you? Why you want to do something like this? Why you would be a good teacher and a professor in a classroom. The thing I find quite often in packets are mistakes. And so these are very easy to fix. The don'ts, the number one is make no mistakes, take your time. You have plenty of time to respond, so don't be in a hurry. Get someone to read it if you're not sure of your language skills. Don't be long-winded. Nobody has time to read a 10-page essay on your research. If you submit a paper, if a person is interested in your research area, they might read parts of it or all of it. But the committee in general will not read a research paper. Not everybody in the committee will have interest in your particular area of research. You have to be careful not to brag, but at the same time present the facts, present your research in a way that exhibits your passion about it and the importance of what you've done. The other thing I find quite often, students will pick referees and referee letters will say, I really don't know this student very well. This student was in one of my classes, but you should look at his or her advisor's letter for deeper information about the person. That's not helping you. But at the same time, I realize that you may not have a lot of options, and sometimes you have to choose from what's available. So try to do the best you can. Let's come to conference interviews or phone interviews. I think broadly they serve two purposes. Either the search committee members would interview anyone who's available at the conference, and their purpose is to try to determine if you belong to do not consider further pool. In other words, they're trying to weed out. Rather than read the CVs and dossiers carefully, they're hoping that they can, in 10 or 15 minutes, get a measure of who you are by interacting with you and decide if they want to pursue this any further or not. The second kind could be when they've already read your dossier and there has been some pre-screening already, and they think that you are a potential invitee for a campus talk or interview. And in that case, they just want to look at maybe 10 or 15 candidates deeply, and they want to come to know you so that they can decide if you are that candidate. It turns out that if the purpose of the campus interview is to weed out, I think strategically it can be bad for you if you're not the kind of person who makes a great impression in 10 minutes. The person who's interviewing you would probably be bored out of their wits, wanting to move on to the next person in the queue, and they're looking for an excuse to weed you out most of the time, because there's so many CVs and dossiers and resumes. Unfortunately, that's the case. So how you know is that typically weeder interviews tend to be short. And it's a signal, it's a fuzzy signal, it's not always the case. But if it's a short interview, you can pretty much assume that they haven't really looked at your dossier very well, and it might be to simply know if you're in the consideration further or not. If they've looked at your CV carefully and they want to meet you either in a group with 2 or 3 faculty members or sequential interviews for longer periods of time, that usually suggests that they have sincere interest in pursuing this further. It may help you to find out and prepare, and I said, as I mentioned, this kind of signaling helps, but it's not precise. It could be that some schools will use a short interview first and then during the conference also schedule a longer interview, so you do not really know. But you need to be aware that in a short interview, you have very few minutes to really impress somebody, and you have to think about what your speaking points are going to be beforehand and come prepared. So you're thinking more about conveying your enthusiasm in a succinct way in a few lines, and that can be quite hard. So let's say you get through all of this and you get invited for an on-campus interview. Now you need to prepare your talk, and here are some general points about how you might want to prepare it. You need to, of course, mention what did you do, but equally importantly, why did you do that? What was the important burning question you were trying to answer, and what's the relevance of your work? Who'll benefit? Typically, even how much? How did you do it? For the general audience in your talk, you need to provide an overview of what was the methodology you used and what were some of the key challenges you encountered. and how did you overcome them. While presenting how you overcame the challenges, you also need to keep in mind that several people in the audience will be technically savvy. And they're looking for understanding the depth in your research and your own ability to present the ideas. You need to at least address what has been the impact so far and future impact of your work. And at least in the engineering programs, we are looking for faculty who will join as colleagues. And in the next 4 or 5 years, or 5 or 6 years, until they come up for tenure, would have built a program of research, by this I mean funded research, so that when they come up for tenure, they would succeed. And so part of what you present, we often ask the question, is this fundable? Is this something that is deep enough that it will result in a longer term program? And if not, did you touch upon other areas of research that you are engaged in, which you perhaps didn't present, which could result in a program of research? So you need to think about this. In the job talk, you are really trying to achieve multiple objectives, and it's not easy to do. It has to be understandable by general audience, because not everybody in your who is attending the talk will be a technical expert in your field. But at the same time, you have to show your technical depth. And the few who are technically savvy would want to know, what's the meat in this talk? Where exactly did you make a contribution and how? You should make sure that your research is not presented in a way that it looks too simple. If it does, then that you're doing a disservice to yourself. You should plan to finish on time, which means leave about a quarter of the time for questions and answers, depending on how much is allowed. In the engineering programs, we don't tend to have a separate talk on teaching abilities. So we are looking for your research talk to tell us how good you might be as a teacher in a classroom. The third hurdle is the job interview itself. Of course, the more research and preparation you can do, the better it is. You need to be specific. You need to look up who are the faculty members, what are their research interests, what projects they're involved in. So if needed, you can be engaged in a conversation. You have perhaps 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes with faculty members to have a conversation. And many times faculty members will give you an opportunity to ask them questions. And if you have not looked at what they do, you might find yourself scrambling and thinking, oh, what can I ask this guy now? Because you've already learned all the mechanical things that you need to know about HR and what are the levels of support provided, etc. You need to maintain enthusiasm. Again, this is hard to do if you haven't done your research well. Keep in mind that everything you do or say can be either favorable or unfavorable to you. That is, you're being evaluated every minute of your job interview, and you really need to be on top of the game. And finally, I do recommend that you do this all before the day and try not to appear as somebody who's not your natural self, who's really not presenting yourself in the way you would in everyday interactions. Excuse me. Yes.
Can I go back one slide?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to balance the first and second point. So can I talk a little bit more?
So the way to think about this is there should at least be 5 minutes to 10 minutes in your talk that only the very technically oriented people understand what you're saying. You'll probably lose some people. You admit that, yes, this part that I'm going to present is technical, and that I don't expect everybody to understand, but I am presenting it nevertheless in order to explain what it is. But at the end of that, you should bring people back again into the fold by saying, let me explain intuitively what this is, what I just told you about. And if you only do the intuitive part, the technically savvy people will not understand what was the challenge behind this. If you don't do the intuition part, then the people who stopped understanding you 10 minutes ago, you cannot bring them back into your fold. So you really need to keep everybody engaged except for a short period of time when you're speaking, at least in engineering programs, to the technical audience. Okay, I'll let my colleague Samir.
Okay, Dr. Gupta covered fairly large ground, so I would not like to duplicate. And most of what he said, they're very applicable. I'm in business school, but I used to be in School of Engineering in St. Thomas only. I worked there for 5 years, and then I moved in 2002 to business school. And our perspective is overlapping and a little bit different also in terms of louder, okay. In terms of okay. In terms of bringing in new colleagues to our department here. So at our place, funding is not important in business schools. If you do that, more power to you. But essentially, we use teacher-scholar model. So essentially, when we look at the performance of new faculty on a yearly basis, the weightage for teaching and scholarship is very close. 50% for teaching and 40% for scholarship and 10% for service. And service can be ignored while you're going through tenure track cycle, getting tenure, very little service. So essentially, you should be a very effective teacher because generally, larger group of students are in evening MBA program or executive MBA and some of those. So you will be teaching in MBA programs also, or full-time MBA. Although we have a larger group of students in the undergraduate program, but we'll give you a combination of assignments. Not in the first year, maybe second year onwards. So it should be a teacher-scholar model. You have to be a very effective teacher, and then you should also be engaging in your scholarship. So we are looking for that, those kinds of things, attributes we see in the applicants. And then we are more an applied research focused school. So we are looking at, I have one of the overheads, I will talk about that, excellence, impact, and relevance. So in business school, relevance is very important. So therefore, we are looking for, generalizability we expect in any academic research, but also application to real life situations. And then industry outreach is very important, connection with industry. So as opposed to writing grants and funded research, we would like you to have projects started with industry folks, where you're involving students, undergraduate and graduate students. So we are looking for that, if you have some industry experience. If you don't, that is fine, but if you have some kind of industry flavor, that is very good. Now, so these are the attributes of a viable candidate. So we are looking right now for a faculty to join us, and largely this person should be teaching statistics, data mining, those kinds of courses, advanced statistics courses. And then, as a backup, should be able to teach operations management, quality courses. Louder? Okay. So anyways, so we are looking at teaching potential. And if you have taught classes, and typically if you have a business degree, you are exposed to teaching, as an instructor in summer or teaching assistant. So some of those sections you teach once in a while. So we're looking for that. Research potential. If you have a publication, that is very good. We don't necessarily go for higher journals, like management science or if you have that, more power to you. But there are other mainstream journals you can publish also, like EJOR or IJPR. But if you have hits in management science and all that is very, very good. And then if you have industry experience, exposure, teaching experience, that helps a lot. And as I said, teaching and research are equally important. If you're not a good teacher, it will be very hard to get tenure. Good teacher means, I'm not saying you're wowing the students, but fairly effective. You have to be rigorous. You cannot compromise, because as an accredited school, we have AACSB accreditation. That is an accreditation for business schools. So they're looking for assurance of learning. So, your learning should be, the learning which you're providing to students is making certain expectations. So for example, there's a course in operations management, which is everyone has to take. So we may have a common test, common set of questions. Some questions which are common. So we want to make sure every instructor is able to deliver certain topics effectively in the same way. Okay, and teaching flexibility. What I mean by that, you cannot demand you will be teaching only statistics. You should be able to teach some other courses, business courses, similar to your background. And then team play, in terms of collaboration with other faculty and also in terms of being flexible in teaching. We will not load you up, but you may be asked to teach in more than one different preparation. So these are the three things. You're looking for excellence, impact of your teaching and research, and relevancy. So these are some examples. When you're in the classroom, you are exposing students to experiential experiences and problem-based learning. You're assigning them problems which they can work on, and both in terms of homework assignments and in class too. So sometimes we do group exercises or case studies. So that is important. So that is somewhat different than engineering school. They will not be doing that. So these are some of the examples through which you can make teaching a research impact. And interview process, very similar to what Dr. Gupta mentioned. But I think our conference interviews, we take it a little bit more seriously. Not only we are screening, we're also taking notes, and probably will contact you again for a phone interview. And that could be another screening step, and before inviting for campus visits. And campus visit, we basically invite 4 to 5 people for one class. And again, it is 1.5 day affair. You will show up in the late afternoon. You will go through dinner with a few faculty members. And the time you connect with somebody, you should be watchful because you are being everything what you say and interact. You are in the interview mode there. Our faculty presentation, candidate presentation are 90 minutes, and we expect it should be 2 parts. One part is teaching, a short, you can select a topic, and you can talk to such committee at that time when we are asked for campus visit. So 30-minute teaching. So those who are sitting in the audience, we are like students, and we may even ask you some questions, but we'll keep it limited to 30 minutes. And you will select a topic which you are comfortable with. And then 60 minutes is your research. Typically you do 3 essays, pick the one which is fairly complete. If you're done with PhD, all the 3 are there, so pick one and present that. Again, 45 to 50 minutes. Leave some time for audience to answer questions. And then you will be meeting with the dean, towards the end, associate dean, provost, and we have this evening and next week breakfast, lunch meetings, individual faculty meetings, 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And towards the end, such committee chair will, see you off. That's what happens. So essentially, we are looking for colleagues who are effective teachers, flexible in terms of teaching more than one area, more than one topic, or more than one topic, quality researcher. And these days, things have become very interdisciplinary. So we would like to see if people are working on different topics, different areas, like healthcare, sustainability, business analytics. So if you are more versatile, that is very helpful in our place. And then enthusiastic as far as academic orientation is concerned. A lot of enthusiasm, and we try to see that. And our salaries are very comparable to good schools, and we are a young department. We are 12 faculty. In fact, one left because of family reason. We are 11, so we are trying to add one more. And we have added 8 new faculty in the past 5 to 6 years. So I've been doing researches for a while. And that's what we have. And we don't have PhD program in our business school. But definitely scholarship is encouraged, recognized, appreciated. Any questions?